Greetings, friends, and Happy New Year! Today, I want to share the build guide for my Flask Drinker Magic Find Pathfinder, and this showcase will feature a budget version reaching around 400% increased item rarity and a high investment version reaching almost 700% rarity. For the budget version, I've limited myself to spend 17 divine orbs, but the more rarity you want, the more divines you will have to spend. This is a level 92 Pathfinder build that is basically an Aurabot. That provides a lot of rarity to your group or duo team, regeneration, and extra utility like damage, cast speed. This is all depending on your scepter. It is important to know that this build cannot be played by yourself, as it does 0 damage. But there are a couple ways around it. For example, the Forbidden Throw of Discord. There are rotations that go 24/7, and people are very interested in teaming up with a Magic Finder. For our defenses, we have 75% fire and lightning resist, and 81% cold resist. We are immune to chaos by taking the chaos inoculation keystone. We have 6000 energy shield, 1100 mana, 22% physical damage mitigation from armor, and 7% estimated evasion chance. When we press our Flask, we're sitting at 2400 recovery per second to our energy shield by using Eternal Youth Keystone. And we also share 32% of our flasks with our party using a level 19 spirit gem called Alchemist Boon. Our offense consists of self-casting crossbow with extra projectiles to slow monsters and provide shield ground in map. But most importantly, 545% rarity of slain monsters. For our gem setup, we only use a single 5 link on Frostbolt. We only primarily need quality on Alchemist Boon, and do not require any high level uncut skill gems. As you can see, my Frostbolt is level 14, just so I don't have to spend too much mana on it. Our main spell is Frostbolt and is linked with Wild Shards, Scattershot, Deceleration, and Arcane Tempo. The purpose of this spell is to stay on the screen as much as possible, throwing enemies with a 25 or 20% chance to fire 8 additional projectiles in a circle, so we cover a lot of ground. Using Deceleration does help out quite a bit, but if you don't have the 5th link, you could do without it. What I did was purchase a Frostbolt that has 3 sockets, or use a lesser jeweler on it and then valid for an extra socket. This way you can save a lot of money. For our spirit gems, we use Alchemist Boon that is linked with Herbalism, Rarity, and Vitality. This aura is the most important one for our build to provide regeneration to life builds or energy shield builds that use Eternal Youth. Then we have Blink that is linked with Ingenuity. This is a mandatory spell to keep up in maps, and we already get a big amount of spirit from our scepter, so it's not a problem. Then we have Defiance Banner linked with Persistence for a small defensive buff against unique enemies. Then we have Arctic Armor with Knowlings. This is used for an extra defensive boost, but of course if you don't have the spirit, feel free to drop it. Our utility spells consists of Profane Bloom or Profane Ritual. It is linked with Profusion, Fast Forward, and Mobility. We use this spell for corpse clear and free power charges to our allies using the Conduit Keystone. This build does not provide any curses because of the effectiveness of them would be too weak in comparison to a weapon switch DPS. We also have Lightning Warp for call in case our teammate dies and then the monster HP points are low. We also have an offhand switch for another way to call enemies in the form of a bow shot that comes from a bow with the culling strike, pierce, chain, acceleration, and ricochet. This could basically be a one link. I just fill these slots because it looks prettier. But if you get level 90, you'll get a free 6 link from the game on an innate skill, like for example this bow shot. Regarding our gear, this is the most important part when it comes to a Magic Find character. I will start with the budget version first, that I will build with around 17 divines. But just as a disclaimer, I've haggled for all the items I purchased, so prices may vary. I highly suggest you go and offer orbs for your items when they are very expensive. People are inclined to actually take the deal and make a sale, and this way you can actually save quite a bit of money. First and foremost, we have our weapon swap that I've briefly mentioned, which consists of a Quill Rain unique bow that has 2 sockets for attack speed, and a quiver that provides us with as much attack speed as possible. They are both 1 Exalt items, and they are used very rarely, so this step is definitely optional for you. Our main scepter. Here we can use 2 types of scepter. Stoic Scepter for Discipline Aura that provides extra energy shield for our allies, or an Omen Scepter for Malice Aura. This provides extra critical hit chance debuff on enemies. But the most important thing on our weapon is the percent increased damage along with flat maximum mana. Extra stats can be helpful, like on this scepter, with item requirements. For example, Reed's Embrace has a pretty big strength requirement, so this helps. I've purchased this scepter, both of them, for 5 exalts each, and there are a ton of them for sale. For our offhand, here we use a cheap shield that gives us most of our yes, ideally with some resist. I've crafted this myself for an extra socket, and I've crafted this item at Gwen, I believe, but it won't go for more than, let's say, 30 to 40 exalts, as it is right now, maybe even cheaper. Our helmet is one of the few places where we can stack a high number of energy shield. I've crafted a few helmets like this by purchasing a blue base from trade sites for around 40 exalts and using a greater essence of defense, resulting in a guaranteed energy shield stat, then exalting until full affixes. This is an RNG craft, so please don't expect to succeed from first try. However, even if you don't hit any good ES numbers like I did on this helmet, it is still quite usable for the Rarity roll until you farm more currency, which is not a problem for this build. Our budget amulet, I've purchased this one for 3 divine orbs, even though it is quite bad. All the gold jewelry are very expensive. That's including gold amulet, gold rings, and even Ventor's Gamble. Rarity is a huge meta-defining stat right now, and people really want to sell this stuff expensive. But in our case, we got quite a good deal, I'd say, for 70% rarity and just a smudge of elemental resists for 3 divine orbs. Our rings are one Antvarius unique ring that I've dropped while playing with another character. This one is nicely rolled for rarity and is a very good addition to the build, its value being around 2 divines. The other slot is a rare ring with all elemental resists and all the rarity you can get. However, the budget version, I was using this sapphire ring with rarity on it to cap a resist that I've purchased for 1 divine. But you could go for a higher number of rarity and the gold ring. Our belt, it is very cheap, just a rare with mana and any resists. Again, I've crafted this one at Tunisia, at the expedition, in a couple of minutes. just to feel some resists. Another thing that I would like to mention, the 20% of Flask cover applied instantly is a very nice addition as a base for a belt. This allows us to fully cap our energy shield immediately. For the boots, we want 30% movement speed, close to 30% rarity, and all the energy shield we can get. I've purchased this pair of boots for only 30 exalts, but unfortunately I had to give it some quality, and that also ate into my budget a little bit. Gloves are a unique mandatory item called Grey Bind. This allows us to take credit for any kills that happen in our presence, allowing us to magic find without having to do any damage. But be careful, the range of the presence does not go off screen. Ideally, we want to corrupt this for 2 sockets and put Rarity runes in it. However, the runes are quite expensive. Last but not least, we have our controversial body armor called Greed's Embrace. This is a unique armor that I've purchased for 6 divines off trade site, and it also came pre-corrupted for 3 sockets and 3 Rarity runes in it. Not a bad deal, I'd say, even if we lose 20% movement speed. Our blink helps us catch up. You will see shortly why I made this decision early on when you hear the price for alternatives. Now, for the non-budget gear that I am using right now, we have quite a few additions. But firstly, I want to show you the budget version. Sits at 296% rarity modifier, and in my opinion a 300% modifier, it is very good considering the amount of budget gear that we're using. We could of course go much higher, and I did, so let me show you how I did it. First of all, we have this belt. This belt is quite expensive, called Ingenuity, and it's a unique that gives us a rarity on our rings. Since there is no rarity on belt, we're using this unique to increase the rarity that our rings gives us. However, the downside from Andavaris is also amplified. So this is not minus 20% to all elemental resists, it's minus 37% to elemental resist, or something like that. This is quite troublesome because ideally we'd like to use 2 Andavariuses, but this is not feasible if you want to have resists capped. We paid 23 divines for this Ingenuity belt, and not only it's amplifying the rarity, but it's also amplifying the downsides from Andavarius, and of course the all elemental resists from our ring. That is why I made it a mandatory thing to get all elemental resists on my gear. When we equip this, our rarity will skyrocket by almost 100%, and of course when equipping even better rings, this will scale even further. When we have a minimum of 15 divines saved up, we can switch our body armor to no longer have the reduced movement speed from Greed's Embrace, and also a great deal of elemental resists from socketed soul cores. This armor can be corrupted for an extra socket, resulting in a 100% increased rarity modifier. However, such an item is a minimum of 28 divines without wounds, so I've opted to purchase one that failed this corrupt but gave 2% extra rarity per soul core, resisting in a loss of 12% rarity, but it's not that bad of a deal considering I've saved at least 10 divines. So now you see why I've opted to go for Greed's Embrace at its full power for 6 divines and not spend 35 divines on a best in slot armor right from the start. Our boots Even though we lose a bit of energy shield, those boots have a perfect 30% roll on Rarity along with an extra resist. I've purchased these boots with 2 sockets already corrupted for 40 exalts and then socketed 2 Rarity runes myself, raising this item's price to 6 divines. However, I feel like it is very worth it. We again need some strength, but that is not a problem because Grand Regalia also requires some strength. So we just balance our stats in a way where this does not affect us at all. The helmet I have crafted the same way I've previously mentioned, purchasing a magic base and using an essence on it. I got lucky enough to hit a big energy shield and a resist roll. A helmet like this one that I have right now, it goes for around 20 divine orbs. I know it's a little bit pricey, but considering the fact that it has a rarity socketed in it, it has a 55% increased rarity and 281 energy shield, this item can become quite expensive. I tried corrupting it to get another socket and put another rarity socket in it, but I failed. I got regen instead. That does not help us whatsoever. Our new ring is a gold ring this time with close to 60% rarity and all elemental resists. I've purchased this one for 3 diviners. We could make use of a nicely rolled Venturous Gamble for the huge amount of resists that it provides and up to 40% increased rarity. However, such a ring is very expensive at the moment. The amulet I'm currently using, I've purchased for 5 divines using life search over the course of 2 days. Again, this amulet would prove to be very expensive, especially if you would like to have all elemental resists on it. I've tried, but it doesn't go below 20 divines. So while I was MFing with my budget gear, I put a life search for similar amulets with good implicit, good rarity roll, and a single resist. Anything on top of it is gravy. The 40% armor is nice, the 130 mana is very nice, but it's not mandatory. We are looking only for the rarity and a resist roll on this one. The last thing that requires a very big investment is our shield. Now, as you can see, I'm still using my budget version shield because our ideal offhand is called Mahu's Subtle Machination. And this is a shield, a unique shield, that increases the effect of socketed soul runes. This shield, with a nice roll of 500% and 3 sockets, is quite expensive. And it goes for around 5 divines with no runes, but it's the endgame choice for us because it will give us between 120% and 200% increased item rarity. I'm currently saving to purchase a very good one that will cost me around 15 divines. Quick note here, we actually require a different resists on equipped rares like amulet, ring, boots, and helmet in order to have our resists capped. Because when we will equip our shield, as you can see, my fire and lightning resists are going down and the shield does not provide any resists whatsoever. So we will have to work on getting better items or better jewels. Our flasks are also quite important and could require a big investment. When it comes to our mana flask, we don't actually use it that much, but we could use a unique flask called Melting Milestorm that has a hefty price of 27 divine orbs. Another item I'm yet to add to this build because of its price. We don't really use our mana otherwise, since rarely we are low on mana. Remember, our mana pool is just an extra 1000 HP and our spells consume very low mana. If you want to provide allies with your mana flask, then the unique is your only option. For our life flask, it's important we have the modifier increased amount recovered as well as 20% quality. Ideally, we want to corrupt such a flask for extra quality, and only on my 4th attempt I have managed to succeed. The way you can find this flask easily is to search for requires level 66 on an ultimate life flask along with the mod increased amount recovered for at least 70% and live search them. I've purchased each for 30 exiles. Yeah, I know, even flasks are expensive nowadays. Last but not least, we could use the golden charm to our advantage for extra loot. However, this is not calculated in any of the numbers that I've given you, because in our passive tree we take a Oasis keystone, making our flask more potent at the cost of 20% rarity from the charm. This is up to your preference, of course. If you're doing easier maps, I suggest unspecking this. Now for our passive tree, we add a ranger pathfinder that is using enduring elixirs, so flask effects are not removed when unreserved life is filled. This way we can use our flask every 3 seconds for a very comfortable experience. The only thing that will kill us is an instant one-shot ability like an enraged boss or mechanic that requires dodging and not tanking. We also need a lot of passive skill points, and Traveler Wisdoms offers us that. Most of our skill points are used to travel to keystones, jewels and flask nodes. We are required to balance our stats for the budget version because of the 115 strength required for Grid's Embrace, but have no fear, there is enough to go around. The endgame version just has some switch strength passives into int, giving us a bit more mana, and we also take Spectral Ward for some extra energy shield, pair 12 evasion on our body armor when we switch to Warrior Invictus. So this is the only difference in the two builds. One of the most important mechanic for this build is Eternal Youth and Chaos Inoculation interaction, allowing us to fully regen our ES instantly, so we have no need for recharge energy shield or faster start of recharge in that regard. We take Oasis for 30% more recovery from flasks, but this can be dropped if you wish to add another 20% rarity from charm. And we also have Conduit to share any charge that we get with our allies instead. This is generated from Profane Ritual. Last keystone that we take is Mind over Matter. Since we do not need mana recovery, this is just an extra effective HP pool that we can utilize. The rest of the points are just some maximum energy shield and a bit of stun threshold based on energy shield instead of life. But even if we get stunned, that is no problem for us because we can drink whenever we like, when we open levers or getting hit by monsters, or sustain allows us to sit around as long as we can drink our medicine and survive, regen up to full. We also take Icebreaker to gain 100% of energy shield as freeze threshold. This is a quality of life that I highly encourage you to get, so you don't get frozen as much. Another important thing about our tree are the jewels. Ideally, we would like to use the Adorned Unique Jewel and Magic Jewels, but it's very expensive. We're talking about hundreds of divines, so I've decided to go for rare jewels instead. Their affixes are very meaningful for our build, but could cost a fortune. Ideally, we want a jewel that gives us increased aura effect and maximum energy shield, as well as having them corrupted for an extra implicit of resists. I gave up after spending a bunch of currency on the aura effect because it's just not feasible on a budget build, and went for maximum cold resist instead, because it's the only max resist that can roll on sapphires, and increased energy shield from equipped focus. All of these jewels I've either purchased blue, Regal Exalt and Valdem, or just purchased them as it is. Most of them failed, but those are the ones that gives us resists, and I'd say they are like 50 to 100 exalts each because they're not that great. It is important to get resist on jewels, however, and as much as possible, because when we equip our endgame shield, we will no longer have capped resists, I will be providing a link for the passive trees, for the jewels and gear in the description of this video for both the budget version and the endgame version. For the permanent buffs from campaign, I took +5 to all stats and flasks gained. This has been everything for my Flask Drinker Magic Pathfinder. If you have any questions or suggestions, please post them down below in the comment section or come ask them in chat when I stream. I would love to have you there. Thank you very much for your time, and as always, hope to see you soon. Exile.